Hello, welcome back. I'm really excited about this next session. It doesn't seem to be that it's only me that's excited about that. My news feed and my Twitter feed are actually full of industry leaders complimenting our efforts here. So what is that we are going to be talking about? We are going to be talking about this cross-platform protocol that will let you connect and link inside native apps. And it's not only about how you can connect to a third-party app, but also how others can connect to your app. And that will improve the user experience. It's going to improve engagement and potentially monetization. So to do that, I'm going to ask on stage two people that have worked really hard to get this here. The PM, Vijay Sankar, on his first F8, and the engineering manager, Jason Clark, who is responsible for Applinks.
Thanks, KP. All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. I'm going to start with a little story that happened to me last week. So this was Friday afternoon last week, and I was listening to some music on Spotify as I was working on the slides for this very presentation. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Spotify has this neat integration with Songkick that lets you track upcoming events of artists you want to follow. So I was listening to The Dig, and I found an upcoming event that I was interested in. We are going to take a look at a short video that demonstrates how the current experience works. Let's take a look.
If you could spit it out, if you could only shout when you open your mouth.
Yep, it was right about then when I gave up and hit the home button. Look familiar? Quick show of hands. How many of you in here have been through a similar frustrating experience on mobile? Exactly, everyone. Wouldn't you want to provide people the best possible experience to consume your content, irrespective of the device or platform? Songkick and Spotify certainly did. They fixed this. Let's take a look at the new experience with Applinks enabled. Way better, isn't it? The web got a lot of things right, and linking is a big part of its success. With Applinks, we want to bring all that to mobile. So what is Applinks? Applinks is an open standard for app-to-app linking. We have open sourced it for everyone to consume with no dependencies on any one company. But to me, the best part about Applinks is its simplicity. It's just a set of tags for you to map your mobile content to your web content. And it's never been easier for you to expose deep links in your app or deep link to other apps. And finally, I know this word gets thrown around a lot, but Applinks is truly cross-platform. It supports iOS, Android, and Windows Phone with plenty of room for us to add more. So here's a look at over 25 apps that have already adopted Applinks today. It's a pretty impressive list and growing. And we are excited to have partnered with all these amazing firms to bring the standard to life today. So what are we going to talk about in this session? We are going to cover two things. Jason is going to give you a deep dive on everything you need to know about how Applinks works, including a live code demo. And then I'm going to come back and talk to you about how the Facebook app supports Applinks. So let's welcome Jason Clark on stage, please.
Hi, I'm Jason Clark, and I'm an engineer on the mobile platform team, and that is one of the teams that's bringing you Applinks here today. And what I'm going to be talking about is app links in a bit more detail. All right, so I'm going to start with a URL because that's what everybody is familiar with. And the URL is, in fact, a unifying principle for app links. This is a URL to my little website that's about beards and beard types and all kinds of beard goodness. So this is a link to a specific beard, the Ernest. We'll come back to that in a minute. When talking about app links, it's good to think in terms of three basic capabilities: publish, discover, and navigate. With publish, what that entails is an owner of content or an app, the ability to say, hey, look, I also have a native application on one or more platforms, and I'm going to publish the fact that this application can handle my content on a particular device. Discover is the other side of that coin. What Discover entails is applications which are linking out, whether that's an application like Facebook or a newsreader or a mail reader or what have you, discovering that there's an app link or a handling app for a particular URL. And then the last bit is navigate, and for navigate there are two sides to the coin. There's the outlinking application, which is linking to some URL, and then there's the inlinking application, which is receiving the URL and displaying, ideally, the correct content. The whole idea of this is that when people encounter content that they're interested in, they experience it in a nice, rich, native way that's fit for the platform that they're using at the time. So looking at this in a bit more detail, again, the example I'm using here is my bearded.im website, and we have this one example, the Ernest, and imagine that somebody has encountered a link to this content on their phone. Today, the normal experience is that you see a mobile browser, and the mobile browser downloads HTML and JavaScript, probably, hopefully form-fit for the mobile device, and they get a web experience on mobile. If I, as the publisher of this content, want to use app links to enrich that experience, I can publish meta tags at each page that I have a app that can handle, and the meta tags describe key information, such as the app ID in the store, if the app needs to be installed. And in this case, this is an iOS example, there's a scheme and a path part that can be used by an outlinking app to transition to my app so that I can display the correct content. Each page that I want to have native support for, I can publish meta tags for in order to enable users to experience the content in the richest possible way. All right, so at this time, what I'd like to do is switch to my actual application, and right now, my application has two pieces. I have a website for bearded.im, and I also have a little native application, and they both display the same content. So switching to my phone, on the home page of my phone, I have three links here. I have Safari, I have my app, which is under development, and then I also have I have Quip, which is an application for editing documents and collaborating with people who you know. So first, let me tap on Safari, go to my link for bearded.im, and you can see this is the Ernest beard type, and I'm displaying various beard types at my site. This is my Elche beard type, and when I drag around, you can see that I have a web experience for this. This is my favorite beard type, which I've been grooming for the last few months. All right, so now the native experience. The content in my native application is exactly the same content, but the experience is native and ideally a little superior to the web experience for this particular device. So right now, I don't have any connective tissue between these two apps. I have addressable content on the web and then really unaddressable content running inside of my native application. And to highlight this, in Quip, I obviously keep my favorite beards list in a document, and here's a bunch of links for beards I found that I like, and if I tap on one, such as the F8, you can see that I get a web experience here. So the normal thing to do when an app doesn't know any better is to host a web view and show the content using web idioms. All right, so that's kind of status quo. Moving back, on the previous slide, I showed you a couple of meta tags for iOS, and what I have here are similar meta tags for Android. And what they, again, relay to code that's discovering app links is where to find the app that can serve this content in a store, as well as how to transition to the application in a way that allows that application to serve the appropriate content. At least that's what these first two meta tags are for Android. The third tag here is not really an iOS or Android specific tag. What it is it's a tag that handles certain scenarios. Specifically speaking, if you have an application that is only mobile, for which there just isn't any sensible web content to display on a mobile device, you can set the meta tag AL web should fallback to false. And what that does is it notifies outlinking applications that if there isn't an app on the box to serve the content, the app should just inform the user that they can't link to the content right now and maybe why. Like, hey, if you want to link to this application, you should install it, something along those lines. If you have web content, falling back to web probably makes sense. If your application has web content, the addition of meta tags to your already existing website is unlikely to be particularly difficult. To highlight that, right now I'm showing you two of the V1 spec Android meta tags, and there are only two other ones, which are optional. So we're not talking about a whole library of things to add to your site. However, if your app is mobile only right now, it could be onerous to stand up a website purely to support app links. So instead, what we've done is we've announced today the delivery of two technologies that should help with this. The first one is the AppLink Cloud Code module, which runs in Parse Cloud Code and makes it very easy for you to create a hierarchy of app links and publish them without having to know all the syntax of the meta tags and so forth. The second is the AppLinks Hosting API, which is designed for Facebook integrated applications and makes it easy, again, for you to just host a link using Facebook's technology, and then you can redirect the individual links as needed if it does happen to be viewed in a browser to maybe a Facebook page advertising your app or some other content that would make sense if you're outside of the mobile setting. All right, so we talked about the publish capability, and we talked about discover. Now I'm going to switch gears to navigate. And again, for navigate, there are two pieces of the puzzle. There's the application, which is encountered a URL, and then there's the application that knows how to serve the content for the URL. In this case, we're starting with the application that has encountered a URL. And this could be any one of a number of kinds of application. Again, it kind of looks like a news feed or something like that, but it could be an RSS reader, it could be an email client, it could be really just about anything that handles links. And if it is AppLink enabled, it can discover that there's another application on the box that can handle the content for the link. When navigating from one application to the next, AppLink's protocol specifies that a payload, referred to as the AppLinks data, is transmitted from the first application to the second application. One reason for that is so that information can be provided to the second application as to who just called me. So that you could link back if you're on a platform such as iOS that doesn't have a back button idiom. But there are other reasons for the AppLink data. The one required property of AppLink data is the target URL. And what the target URL does is well, rather I should say what it is the original URL where the AppLink was found. The reason that always needs to be transmitted from the outlinking navigating app to the inlinking navigating app is that there's a chance that the receiving app needs that URL in order to serve the content correctly. Maybe it needs a parameter, maybe it needs some aspect of the path in the URL in order to, in this case, display the correct beard or something like that. The rest of the properties in this AppLinks data example, which I'm showing you here, are optional. Extras is a bucket where the outlinking app can just put whatever information it wants that relates to its application. Perhaps an application has 3 or 4 different places where you can link in its UI, and the developers of that application decided to just declare, hey, this link was tapped in this place, and this other link was tapped in some other place, and maybe that's useful to a receiving application. Or maybe it's an ad ID or something like that, depending on the nature of the outlinking application. And the refer app link is sufficient native target information for the receiving app to link back. All right, so now I'm going to switch back to my application, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add meta tags for my site to publish the fact that I have app links, and then I'm also going to update my native application so that it knows what to do when it gets linked to. So starting out on my laptop, what I have here is I'm just at a command prompt, and this is the root of my public website, and this is a path to one of the beards that my site is publishing, the F8. And in this directory, there isn't much. There's an image, and there's the HTML content. So it's a very simple application at this point. If I bring up the HTML, again, the HTML itself is very simple. There's an image, there's the name of the actual beard type, and then I have a meta tag here which describes, hey, this is an app link, and if code needs to transition to a native application, here's the scheme to use on iOS. My application right now is under development, so I don't have a store ID, but if I did, I would have a third meta tag here to describe the store ID. The second meta tag just informs discovering code what my friendly name for my application is, and in this case, that's bearded.im. All right, so if I publish this to my Parse Cloud Code project, then I would now have those meta tags. And I'm going to switch over to Xcode environment, and here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment a block of code which overrides a virtual function. This virtual function gets called by the operating system whenever my application is launched or switched to using a URL. And what I do is some very, very simple URL parsing to determine what content to show. All right, so now I am going to build this down to my device. And when it pops up for me, I will shut down the debugger. OK? And now, let's switch to my phone so we can see it. So remember, we have a web version of my application. We have a native version of my application. And then I also have my document where I keep track of all my favorite beards. So let's go back to the document. If I tap on one of these, like let's say the El Che, now, instead of going to the web view, it transitions to my native application and displays the correct content. If I go back to the original, or to the Quip application, and tap a different link, then I get a different beard, even though I'm transitioning to the same application. So that is what happens when an outlinking application that supports app links is coupled with an inlinking application that supports app links. And it's worth noting that the Quip application was not built with bearded.im in mind, although that would be awesome. Instead, the Quip application was built with app links, and then the bearded.im application was also built with app links so that they can integrate seamlessly like this. All right, moving on. So thus far, I've been talking about applications which publish the existence of app links and also handle the incoming linking of app links. The other side of that is applications which discover the existence of app links and outlink. And that's going to be a little less common, similar to the web where almost every page is being linked to from somewhere, but not every page arbitrarily links out from that page. Native applications work the same way. In that case, if you're an outlinking application and you are one of those apps that need to arbitrarily link out, there's work to do. There's the discovery of the meta tags, there's the determination of whether or not the native application is on the device, and so forth. So we're building, or we have built, and we're shipping today, libraries to help with that work if you are going to build an outlinking application. This line of code here is the simplest example of a link out to either a web view or a native application, depending on what's going on in the box at the moment, for the bearded.im earnest example. It's showing use of the AppLink navigation class in the Bolts framework, and we have an iOS and Android version of that framework shipping today. What the Bolt frameworks gives you is navigation protocol support for both outlinking and inlinking applications. Another thing that it's good to be aware of is that if your application is dealing in lots of URLs, like let's imagine it's an email client and perhaps somebody emailed you an email with 30 URLs. In that situation, there could be user experience problems and stability problems if the client went out and scraped 30 sites just to show an email. So we're also announcing an index today that's free to use for your applications. If you want to integrate the index with your app, you can make a single round trip, pass all of the URLs that you want AppLink information for, and we will return the native targets relevant for your platform in order to determine whether or not there is an AppLink on the box. And the Bolts framework is capable of using both the indexed mode and the scraped mode, and it just falls back to scraping if there isn't an index available. All right, so we talked about discovery, we talked about navigation, and we talked about publication. I have a few more topics to go through, which are just, I guess, to round it out, depending on what kind of app you're building. If your application has secured content, for example, if a token is required to view a page, there are a couple of things to consider. One is, have your AppLink metadata just be very general across your entire site, and use the target URL to differentiate the content. That way there's no leakage of information, even though you're sending the meta tags to unauthenticated clients that are either indexing or scraping or building out UI. Our scraper and the Bolts framework clients will send header to your servers that say, hey, look, we're not asking for your content, we just want to see your AppLink's meta tags. If your application is mobile only, as I mentioned before, we have you covered to keep you from having to build out a website just to support AppLinks, but there are also a couple of other considerations to keep in mind. Web apps are naturally addressable, and people understand copying and pasting URLs from browsers. When you're using a native application, there is no equivalent idiom, and so it's useful to add a share out button or something else that will allow you to copy URLs to clipboards and also do higher level structured sharing in order to get the address to your content out of the application so that others can use it, tap on it, and link back into your application. Lastly, AppLinks has been designed to sit side by side well with other deep linking technologies. AppLinks is really focused on discovery and cross-platform support. We really want the URL that everybody already understands to just work on native devices. The flip side of this is that AppLinks really doesn't dictate one way or the other which of the native idioms you use for navigating from one place to the next, and so you can use whatever library you like for deep linking. Other deep linking initiatives can have their tags sitting next to your AppLinks tags, their libraries working for your AppLinks navigations, in order to make it so that you can support multiple initiatives around your native code. That's all I've got, and with that, I'll hand it back to VJ. Thank you.
So let's talk about how the Facebook app supports AppLinks. We are excited to share that starting today, the Facebook iOS and Android apps support AppLinks, and support for Windows Phone is coming soon. Now we are going to talk about 3 things related to this. The first one is, why is the Facebook app adopting AppLinks interesting for you and people using your app? 2, what are the different ways in which the Facebook apps support AppLinks? And finally, we'll talk about how do you take advantage of this. So let's start with the why. As you all know, Facebook is the primary source of discovery for mobile apps. So you might ask, how much of this is related to linking? Let me show you something that might help answer this. Every week, the Facebook apps send in excess of 2.4 billion link clicks just from newsfeed on iOS and Android. 2.4 billion link clicks. Let's unpack this for a moment. Most of these 2.4 billion link clicks lead people to your content today. And now, with the Facebook app supporting app links, you can now provide people the best possible experience to consume your content, irrespective of the device or platform. So this, in turn, the improved user experience will lead to much better engagement for both your content and your apps. Let's move to the second question, which is like, what are the different ways in which the apps support app links? So the first one is URLs that are shared directly from your apps. You can use our APIs. You can use our dialogues, like the share dialog or the message dialog. It doesn't matter. However, you could share a URL from your app back to Facebook. It'll be supported. It gets better. Links that are directly shared on Facebook are also eligible. Let me give you an example. If a person copy-pastes a URL directly into the status update, that will just work. And finally, links that are shared via page post stories are also supported. I think you're beginning to see the pattern here. We are trying to make it easy to support all possible forms in which people can share your content back to Facebook. Most of these URLs will be app link enabled. And just like sources, app link enabled URLs, it doesn't matter where they are rendered. All the three biggest surface areas on which the app link enabled URLs are rendered will automatically work, including newsfeed, timeline, and Messenger. Let's now look at an example of how an app link enabled story works on Android. So in this case, Brady has pasted a URL into his status update of a house listing from Redfin. So if a person were to go ahead and click on this newsfeed story and they have the Redfin app installed, they will directly be taken to that house listing within the Redfin app. That's it. Very straightforward. And just like stories, app links power ads as well. So better content experiences will lead to better engagement, and that will translate to better ad performance as well. And like we had discussed earlier, given how easy it is for you to expose deep links via the standard, you can now take advantage of that to engage specific audiences with the exact piece of content in your app, so that this way, the number of steps they have to take in order to complete a specific action is going to be far fewer. This, again, will lead to much better ad performance. So this now brings us to the final question, which is, what do you need to do? And surprisingly, this is the easiest of them all. All you need to do is publish a few tags to expose deep links in your app, and then enable support for receiving app links. That's it. By doing this, you can take advantage of the Facebook app support for app links to provide the best possible experience for your content for people. So to summarize, app links makes it easy for you to link out to any other app or expose deep links than it's been ever before. Go out to applinks.org to check out and learn more and get started. We're really excited to work with everyone here to make mobile open and connected with app links. Thank you.
We have some time for questions, so please raise your hand. We have 2 mics in the room.
Hi. So 2 questions, actually. Would there be an upside for using HTTP headers instead of HTML meta tags for all the metadata? For example, if you wanted to link to something that's not a page, like an image or something like that. And then the second question, Have you found a good user experience method of linking from the web to applications?
These are good questions. Okay, so the first question is, would there be advantages to using headers rather than meta tags? And the second question is, are there good, approaches for linking from web to native? On the first question, yes, there are advantages. In fact, this is a direct trade-off, and I can talk about the pros and cons either way. We chose meta tags because they're very easy to author, and there's no ownership requirement for you in terms of like the whole stack. For example, suppose you're hosting just a single page at a domain and the rest of the domain is owned by a web hosting company or something like that. You still are certainly going to be able to add meta tags, but not necessarily control the headers. But I don't want to close off that possibility. The way to think about applinks is a spec that describes what information we need about a URL. That information could be delivered with different mechanisms as the spec matures. Right now, simple meta tags getting things rolling. Over time, who knows which direction this will expand out to enable other scenarios like the JPEG one that you mentioned. Does that help with the first one? Cool. The second question. Platforms make this a little difficult, and they vary from platform to platform, and we didn't want to come out with something uneven right away. But we do think it's important to be able to link from web to native. So we're gonna sort through all of that and find out from you guys what level of support you would like on a per platform basis. Should it just be different from iOS to Android to Windows Phone? Or maybe we should work closer with platform vendors to make it so that this just kind of sorts out. But what we didn't want to do is say, okay, yes, there are lots of different browser types and they kind of behave differently when it comes to linking from web to native, and just embrace that and hope. We wanted to do something that was stable that you could rely upon. Does that help for the second question? I know it's not an answer in terms of like, hey, code it up today, but at least you kind of have our mentality for why we didn't just jump out with a library.
Questions you like?
Hi, our application already implements Facebook deep linking. I would like to know if AppLinks is a replacement for deep linking, or if we should implement both deep linking and AppLinks.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is AppLinks a replacement for deep linking? I wouldn't say, strictly speaking, that it is. The way I think it's probably easiest to infer lots of answers to that question is AppLinks are a URL-like mechanism for native applications, and deep links subsumes that to a certain extent, but also adds some very specific Facebook capabilities. I can give a concrete example. If I have a native application that is Facebook integrated, and I share a story using Facebook platform about somebody else's URL, with Facebook deep linking, that story can come back to my app, even though that's not my URL. But with AppLinks, the authority as to who gets to decide what app launches is the URL. So AppLinks says, tap that link, go to the link owner's app. So Facebook deep linking still works and still supports that, but you have to share through Facebook's platform. Whereas AppLinks just are there. It kind of depends on your needs, whether you would implement one or the other or both.
The one thing I would add to that is with deep linking, it's either an on-off switch at the app level, but with AppLinks, you can control it for every single URL if you want to enable it or not, and where you want to send people to.
So the question earlier came up, how do you handle sending links or launching an application or sending content from the web to your mobile phone? Yep. Excuse me, mobile phone. I actually created a company called Double Vision that's launching next week, getdoublevision.com. Help at getdoublevision.com. Starting next week. And we actually see 20% conversion from web to mobile downloads through our system as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I want to be clear. I was not attempting to downplay the value of that linking. I was highlighting the uneven surface area that we had to work with there.
Question over here.
A lot of companies work off of affiliate networking, which is a multiple hop across a couple different URLs. Have you tested this? Will the navigation support that multiple hops through like an affiliate network to an end application?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, that it is our intention that the navigation work through multiple hops. There's going to be variants as this all gets sorted out. So for example, we've built a couple of libraries and we've built a scraper, but others will build scrapers, libraries, and things like that, and we will find out what the norm settles down to as to what kind of refers get followed consistently that you can rely upon and so forth. But yes, the specs which redirects to follow, which ones not to, in order to handle the scenario you described.
Question here.
How easy is it to track the incoming links to your app? Like which websites are linking to you, which apps are linking to you?
Good question. Facebook doesn't have a way of seeing into your app. And it also doesn't have a way to see if, like in the example I showed, Quip links to you. But your app is being called. So you can take the information you're receiving and do what you want with it, including log it somewhere. But I don't know, does that address the question?
I don't think they can.
Good question.
The extra tags portion of the data is what got my interest with that. Like, where is that specified? How is that transmitted between the apps?
Got it. Yes, actually, I think I kind of blew past that part. So you're talking about the app links data, right? In fact, let me say what I didn't say. The app links data is dynamic information passed from one application to the next, and it really represents this one navigation event. Whereas the meta tags are more static, and they're suitable for indexing and caching and things like that, and it's related to the URL. The app links data is spec'd to be consistent across platforms in terms of what's in it. However, it's different from one platform to the next, iOS, Android, Windows Phone, in terms of how it's transmitted. In Android, it's in the extras property of the bundle of the intent call. And in iOS, it's a well-named parameter on the URL for the scheme. But in both cases, and in fact in all cases, your application, when receiving that, would get the entire app links data blob, and then you can do what you want with that information.
Hey, we have a question in the front.
My question is, like, for example, in the Facebook, you saw some resources. However, the application is not installed yet. Can you like intelligently detect what's the address of the Play Store, and so that when user click on the button, it will instead bring user to the like App Store or Google Play to driven user download? Like, can I specify some metadata in my URL to tell you where you should go, and why you don't support this feature?
Okay, I think the question involved, can we detect whether the app's installed, right? The last part was where I got lost about the support. I think we actually do support the feature you're describing, but let me describe what we have, and you can tell me if we're missing something. So in the meta tags that are published for a given URL, you can describe the store ID for your application, and you can also describe the necessary information to navigate from one to the next. Between those two, for the platforms that we're supporting, you can determine whether or not the app is on the box, and then it's up to your application to decide, hey, if it's not there, do we punt and go to web, or, oh, if it's not there, do we encourage the person to install the application? But I believe there is sufficient support for determining whether the application's on the box, and the only thing we don't do is dictate to the outlinking application whether they should favor installing or favor falling back to web. That's kind of specific to your scenario. So does that address the question? Cool.
We have another question.
So what's the consequence with for search when apps are starting to use links, app links, I should say?
It's a good question. I'm excited about search. Search has worked out really well for URLs on the web, and here's hoping we have similar success with app links. But we don't have any search technology to announce today.
Question here.
Hi. I've got an in-linking app with lots of interesting content. I'd like outlinking apps to be able to find out about me. What's the best way to do that?
Good question. So I have an in-linking app. There's all kinds of cool stuff to link into in my app. How do outlinking apps find out about me? Get your URLs out there. Just get them out there, however you would normally get them out there. Email them, SMS them, share them on Facebook, publish them however you can, because when an outlinking app encounters your URL, it will natively transition to your app and show your content. What AppLinks doesn't do is provide a general directory of AppLinks supporting applications. That's feasible, but that's not something that exists today. The directory is the internet.
Question over here, left or right of your stage.
This goes back to search. I'm not a developer, so it's like I'm understanding maybe half of what you're saying, but...
Me too.
Great. I think you're doing more than me. Google has app indexing, so that when you do a search, you click, you go to the apps through that. From what I can see, these are completely incompatible. There's no one that can rule them all. So am I wrong on that? And have you talked to them at all about, hey, how can this be working with what you're doing with app indexing?
I'd like to respond to the incompatibility point. I don't think there's any incompatibility. What we've done is we've looked at the various linking strategies that exist and tried to see if there's anything we're doing that make it so that you get stuck with an either-or decision in your application. And I'm not aware of such a case. But as far as offering the exact same set of features as any or every other deep linking technology, we certainly don't. We are focused right now on the ability to discover whether there's a native handler for a link, and also the ability to address content in a cross-platform way that humans understand, which is this URL unification. Other standards are working on other things. Yes.
One more.
So follow up the question like I asked. Would that happen like, say I have a product, I really want other platform help me to driven traffic. However, now I integrate deep link from Google, from Facebook, from other company, and then would that become when user click on the button, I don't know what will happen, or multiple SDK will track them and open multiple pages and cause something terrible thing happens. So
well, I hope no terrible things happen.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. I think the dynamic you described is, I guess there's a risk. You could have lots of SDKs running at once in your box, but we're not encouraging that. We're saying pick your link handling SDK, and then hopefully, I don't think it's a vain hope, we have the same dynamic that we had with the web. The web has lots of different ways you get linked to and lots of different refer information and so forth, and yet, by and large, people see a link, they tap the link, they see the thing they expected. And so if your application is built to expect linking from multiple outlinking apps, then that should sort itself out. Hey, can you guys humor me for a second? Hands in the air. Please. Thumbs in the air. Yes. Thank you for coming to our talk. You've been a great audience. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So besides a copy of that picture, you can go to the left-hand side, and there are plenty of t-shirts for you to pick up for Applinks. See you in half an hour.